Hello everyone and welcome to the tutorial. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to use the 3D car behavior in GDevelop. Now the 3D car behavior can easily be used to make racing games, and basically that's the main genre of racing games, but even just car objects that you'll want in a physics game. So the 3D car behavior is very useful because before it existed it was way harder to make 3D car logic. Now of course we have to get a scene set up before we do anything, so let's add a new object. And let's go into our 3D box. And this is going to be our car, but we're going to call it player because it's generally best to call your player player instead of the object. And we're going to leave all of these settings just regular. We're going to activate all of the faces, so make sure the back face is selected because that's not selected by default. And we're going to create a sprite using Piskel. And I'm going to simply use this red color, use the paint bucket tool, and click it, and then we'll have the sprite saved. Now we're going to fill this in for all of the faces, so let's click the back face, and then you can choose project resources, and then you'll be able to repeat the same box that you just made. So we're going to click all of these. I'm going to speed this up. And now we're going to hit apply. And now since we're done with that, let's drag the player onto the scene. You'll see that we have this red cube, and it's 3D, it's not flat. And we're going to preview the scene. Now, when we preview the scene, we're going to see a cube in a top-down point of view. Now, we don't actually want a top-down point of view since we're going to be controlling a 3D car. We need like a third-person point of view. You could use a first-person point of view, but third-person point of view is the standard for most racing games. So let's go and double-click into our player. Let's add a new behavior. So let's click into the Behaviors tab, add a behavior, and I'm going to type in third-person camera. And you'll see that we have the third-person camera. Here, the internet, make sure you have your internet connected before try to download any extension. And now so I'm connected to the internet, let's click into it again. And I'm not going to update the extension right now because we already have it, but we will have all of these settings. Now, I've already covered the third person camera before, so we're not going to go into all the details here, but we're going to keep this default right here just for the sake of this tutorial. And I'm going to change the camera distance to being equal to 700. So now that we have that, I'm going to click apply. And if I click preview, you'll see that now we're looking at the cube from a third person point of view. So now we can tell that the game's actually 3D. Let's X out of here. And now that we have the player set up in terms of the camera, we want to make the player actually start moving now. We want to activate the 3D car behavior. So let's double click into our player and let's click into behaviors and let's add a new behavior. And let's call this one, well, not call it, let's type in 3D car, and we should see 3D car soon. Let's just type in car to start off with. Car, and then you'll see that we have 3D physics car. Let's click into 3D physics car. Now, when you click into 3D physics car, there'll actually be two behaviors that are added at the same time. We have physics 3D, and then we have the actual physics car 3D. So they cannot work without each other. So don't delete the physics 3D, because if you delete that, then the physics car 3D will not work. So we're not going to get into all the settings right now. Let's hit apply first and see what happens. We're going to preview. And you'll see the first thing that happens is our player starts to fall. And we don't want that. We need something for the player to actually stand on. So let's add a new object. Let's add another 3D box. And let's call this one, let's call it ground. And we're going to keep all the settings the same. We're going to do the same thing we did with the player. Activate the back face. But instead of having it red so we can tell the difference between the two, let's create a black box with Piskel. So I'm going to click into the black color, go into the paint bucket, and click it. And let's save it. And once again, I'm going to speed this part up of me adding all of the faces to the ground. And now that we have the ground, before we hit apply, let's add a behavior to the ground. Because one thing to know is that when you have a physics object, they will not be able to naturally collide with any other objects unless it's also a physics object. If you do not add a physics behavior to the ground, the player will completely ignore it and then it'll fall through it. So let's add a new behavior and let's type in physics Let's type in 3D physics engine since this is a 3D object. Click into 3D physics engine, and we're going to keep everything the same except for the body type. The static body type will make sure that it can't move. The dynamic body type will make things move, and the kinematic body type is similar to the static, but it can move using events. So we're just going to keep it static since we never want to move. Might as well activate fixed rotation, and we're going to keep everything else the same right now. So let's hit apply, and now let's drag the ground onto the scene. So now, since we're working in a 3D space, we have to make sure that our player is over the ground. And that's where the Z position comes in. When it comes to 3D and GDevelop, the Z position is the height. So the higher that we set the Z, the higher the object will be. And since we want the player to be higher than the ground, we're going to set the Z position of the player to be something like 200. And now that you'll see that we even have a shadow that we can see because it's above the ground. And we're going to stretch out the ground object so it can cover a wide area. Because we're going to need a lot of space. So I recommend that you just drag it out for a long time. Just drag it out for a decent amount of space because the car is going to cover a lot of space very quickly, especially if we set it to a very high speed. So we're just going to have it right here for right now. And now if we preview the scene, see that our cube or our car, it will fall down on the ground and it'll just sit there. So now that we have that, it's time to actually get the car moving. How do we make the car move? Now, we could make the car move using events, but before we do that, we need to understand the behavior itself. So let's double click into the player. Let's go into behaviors. And right now, I'm going to explain all of the different things in the car behavior. All of the different things. Now, we have the brake max torque and we have the handbrake max torque. Now, from my own testing, these seem like they're actually exactly the same because when you're using events in GDevelop for the car, you can only control the handbrake, not the brake. But for my testing, it's generally best just to set these to the same value. This will control how fast you can brake because the braking is like the acceleration. So it'll start to decelerate the car if you set the acceleration of the brake to be higher. So we have the brake max torque and the handbrake. These don't matter. You can just set these to the same. So I'm going to set both of these to something high, like 10,000. And of course, how high you should set the handbrake is based on how fast your car ends up being. Now, you have the engine inertia, and this, it already explains it right here. It says it slows down the car's acceleration. So this will just change how fast does your car naturally slow down. If you have no inertia, it'll never slow down on its own except for by a little bit of the friction. But if you have a really fast car that you want to actually be able to stop more easily, you would set the inertia to be a higher value. That's what that is. Now, this is also pretty self-explanatory right here. We have the max engine speed, and you can ignore the word engine and just say max speed because this will control the max speed that your car can move at. And the max engine speed, I'm gonna set to something a little bit faster, like 7,000. It doesn't matter what you set to right now, but the max engine torque. Now, I don't really think there's a good explanation right here. It says that it allows cars to climb steep slopes and push heavy objects. Now, although that is true, what max engine torque really is, it's just a fancy way of saying the acceleration. That's exactly what the max engine torque is. So you can ignore the words max engine torque and just think of car acceleration. That's all that this is. So I'm going to set the max engine torque. I'm going to set like we can just keep it default. Let's just keep it default. Now, beginning steer speed. We have the beginning steer speed and we have the ending steer speed. Now, I've already tested out this extension before, and I do not like personally using it. It leads to a lot of weird things of your car tipping over randomly, sliding in different directions when you're trying to program it. It's really weird, and it's better to manually rotate the car in the direction because that's what it does anyway. And if GDevelop is watching this, I hope they do fix the steering. The steering can get quite whack when you're using it. That's from my testing, but I still encourage you to test it out. But the steering is quite whack, and I would set all of these to 0 and just focus on manually rotating it yourself because it does not work too well because this is one of the earliest versions of the 3D car behavior, so it's not perfect yet. Now, we have the wheel radius, and this is also quite self-explanatory. It's the radius of the wheel. And remember, the radius is the distance from the center of the wheel to the edge of the wheel. So think about an imaginary wheel because you will not be able to see these wheels on the object. As you can see, when we looked at our player earlier, there's no wheels that you can see on the object. These are invisible wheels that we cannot see. We kind of have to imagine this. And then we have the wheel width, which is like 5. So we have a slightly thick wheel. It's not really that thick. Now, when it comes to setting the size of your wheel, very important. You don't want to make this number high unless your object is really big. So since we're dealing with a relatively small object, these are a very good value to keep it at. If you set really big wheels, your car is not going to work well. It's going to be tipping over, not going to drive well. And if you set it really small, it's the same thing. This is a very good default value. It works with a lot of sizes. Just know if you're having a really big car, you want bigger wheels. So let's go into advanced properties as well. Now, pitch and roll max angle will kind of change the teeter totter of a car. Like it'll allow it to move in one direction a little bit. Let's say you're turning. Let's say you're trying to turn to the right. Like it'll move to the right first. It'll move to the left first a little bit, but it'll still be turning to the right. Now, personally, I keep this the same because our car is going to be flat on the ground. You're not going to notice much, especially since we're using a flat and even object. You're not going to really notice the pitch and roll max angle that much. But 90 is a good default. It doesn't really change much unless your car is going to be kind of uneven. Now, the first gear ratios will kind of change how fast you go into each gear. And of course, you start from first gear, the longest. It takes a little bit more to get into second gear. That's why it keeps getting lower. So, the lower these values are, the harder it is going to be to get to the last gear. As you see, it goes all the way up to sixth gear, just like regular cars. First gear, same thing. How fast it's going to be until you start going backwards, the reverse gear. There's no like reverse key where you can click and make it reverse. It's controls. No, it's just going to make it go backwards. Now, back wheel offset. This is also explanatory. There's invisible back wheels and there's invisible front wheels. So how it goes is there's 4 invisible wheels. You have 2 invisible back wheels and then you have 2 invisible front wheels. And we have a back wheel drive. You can have a back wheel drive and a front wheel drive. Basically, this will control which wheels are going to move. Now, you want both wheels to move. You want both of them to move because when you try to do it with just one, it's not going to move very well, especially if the back wheels are the only one. So you want both the wheels to move when you're trying to make a basic car. If you're trying to make some weird type of object, like maybe you're trying to drag another car, then maybe you wouldn't want both of these active. But for a regular car, you want the back wheels and the front wheels. Of course, these are more wheel offsets for the Z position, the Y position. You have different wheel offsets for all of them. And that's basically the car behavior. And that's what everything does. Feel free to rewind this part if you want to fully understand the car at all times. But that's how the car behavior works. So I'm going to hit apply. So we just went through all of that nerdy stuff about this does that and that does what. Now it's time to actually make the car move. So I'm going to go into our scene events and let's add a new event. I'm going to right click and just to keep it organized, it's going to be a very, very small project, but just to keep it organized, let's right click our blank event, going to add and let's add a new event group. We're going to name this event group. We're going to name it car controls. Car control. And let's drag this condition or this event under the event group. You'll see that's indented. The line will be indented. Let's drag it under there. So now we want to make it so if we press the W key, our car will start accelerating forward. So let's add a new condition. Let's go into other conditions and you'll see that we have the keyboard in the input section. Let's go into key pressed and let's type in W. And now when I click OK, you'll see that it says if W key is pressed, then we want to do a certain action. Let's click into action, click into our player. If we scroll down slowly, you'll see that we have the car controls right here. Now, some of these events are kind of like, what's the word for, similar to each other. Like, for example, you have simulate accelerator stick control. This is the stick force. Now, if you want to go forward, you want the stick force to be, if you want to go forward, you set it to 1 or something that's higher than 0. And if you want to go backwards, you would set it to -1 or something that's less than 0. So this will just control stick force, like how fast will it be accelerating basically. And this can be pretty good, but there's also something that you can use. We're not going to use this one, but simulate the move forward key press. And this is basically, it simulates the accelerator stick being at 1. There's no extra configuration for this. So if you want to have more control over how fast your car starts moving forward, you can set this. This is a better action than move forward. So generally, you'll want to use simulate accelerator stick control instead of using simulate move forward key press. So that's basically what I'm trying to say here. But we're going to set this to 1, which is the same thing as move forward. But like I said, you have more control over how fast it'll move. So let's click OK, and now let's click preview and see what happens. Now you'll already see right off the bat that since we have the car section on, it kind of moved a little bit when it dropped because I got wheels on it. So let's put forward. You'll see that right off the bat, our car actually flips over. You just saw the cube flip, and it's right now upside down, so it can't move. Car's upside down, so it cannot move because the wheels are on the bottom of the object. So how do we stop the car from flipping over? Because this naturally happens when you have the car behavior. Now, there are 2 ways to stop your car from flipping over. And you have, this is the indirect way. Well, this is the way that helps. Your car will still flip over. But generally, we actually have a flawed car. Because, of course, the car is not usually in the shape of a cube. If you have a car in the shape of a cube, it's very easy for it to fall over because it's a cube. A car has like a lot, it has more width to it. That's what I'm trying to say. It's kind of thicker. So you'll want to make your car a little bit have more width and then make it a little bit longer as well. So this is more shaped like a car. It's a longer width and a longer height. A car is not symmetrical. That's what I'm trying to say. So let's go back into the events. And now this will still not stop our car from flipping over. If we press forward, well, actually, that did help. That's with the indirect way. So just the shape is already helping. It's kind of hard to tell that we're moving forward, but you can tell because we're moving all the way off. And our car completely fell off. Now, this right there will help. But another way to make sure that your car won't flip over no matter the shape of it, because maybe you do want a cubic car, what you can do is add a condition. And we want this to always happen. But what we're going to do is lock the X and Y rotation of the car. So let's add an action. Let's click into our player. And let's change our rotation on the x-axis instead of always equal to 0. And we're going to do the same thing for the y-axis. So let's go in here and add another action. Click into player. Let's change the rotation on the y-axis to also be equal to 0. And now if we set our car back to something more cubic, let's set the width and height to back equal to 100. If we set it to something more cubic, and this is a little bit whack, but you'll see that our car won't flip over, even though it's more cubic. Our car would not flip over. So now that we have that, I'm still going to get rid of that. I don't like the way that the car is looking right now. But let's change the depth to be equal to 100. Let's stretch it out a little bit to be more shaped like a car. And if you really want to lock down the player, let's double click into our player, go into behaviors, and you can put fixed rotation. So the rotation will stay fixed unless you change it using command. Or if it was falling, it will sometimes rotate. It just depends. But let's hit apply. And now our car will never flip over. We can move forward and our car will never flip. This is a very stable car that we have. So now let's go and make our steering. So we want to be able to move left and move right. So I'm going to right click. Let's go into add and we're going to add a new event below. And let's add another condition. Go into other conditions and we want to make it so if the D key is pressed that we rotate to the right. Let's go into keyboard, key press, let's type in D. And now that we have, if the D key is pressed, we want to rotate the player toward the right. So let's add an action, take it to player, you see that we have rotate. And we want to rotate the object clockwise. Let's go into, let's put 60. I want to put 60. It'll rotate 60 degrees every second if you're holding D. Let's hit preview. You see I'm moving forward. And if I press D, you see I rotate the right. And I can move forward and I can fall off. So we're going to do the same thing for A. So we can copy and paste this. This is very similar. So let's right click the condition, copy, and let's right click it again and paste. And instead of changing it to if D key is pressed, let's put if the A key is pressed. And instead of rotating in 60 degrees per second, all we have to do is rotate negative 60 degrees per second, and it'll rotate left instead of right. So now if I press A, you see we rotate to the left. If I press D, rotate to the right. So I can have more freedom in moving around my car. If I'm about to fall off the edge, I can swerve to the right thing for over here. So now we have way more freedom for our car. Fall off the edge. And one more thing is you have moving backwards. Now there's two ways to move backwards, and they actually are slightly important when it comes to braking. So let's add a new condition. We're going to put Shift A, and that'll add a new event below. Let's add a condition. Let's go into other conditions. Our braking key, we're going to set it to being equal to S. So if the S key is pressed, then we want to brake. Now, let's click into our player for the action. If we scroll down, you'll see in the car controls we have the simulate the hand brake key press, and that's what I meant earlier. I don't know why there's a brake and a hand brake. GDevelop hasn't officially released documentation on exactly the difference yet, but we have simulate the hand brake key, and we also have simulate moving backwards. Now you may think these are the same, just like the accelerator thing and the forward, but they're actually not exactly the same. When you're braking using the handbrake, your car can go all the way to 0, but you can't actually move backwards after a certain point. You can't actually move backwards, so you have to turn all the way around just to move backwards. Now, if you're using simulate move backwards, when you press S, not only will you start slowing down like you're braking, but you'll also be able to move backwards, even when you do reach the speed of 0. So I generally like using simulate move backward key press, but you can actually use both because there's a lot of keys on the keyboard. So you can have a braking key and you can have a backwards key. So there's a lot of different things that you could do. Now, we're going to put simulate move backwards. We're going to click OK, and we're going to preview this once again. Now I'm going to try go to an edge. I'm going to try move forward and then brake. I'm going to press S, and I stopped. But I'm also moving backwards with the simulate move backwards key. Now it's kind of hard to tell the movement because we don't have a lot of surrounding objects. But just know that I'm braking, then I can move backwards by holding S. So this is how it goes. And you can start reverse driving, just like a car. Now those are all the car controls, and that's how you use the car behavior in GDevelop. That's basically the end of the tutorial right here. Now I do have a few send-off messages before we go. Now, of course, you should definitely test out using slopes. Your car can go on slopes. This is now 3D, so you can create slopes that your car can go on. Now, if I double click into the player, go into behaviors, you can also play around with different shapes. Generally, like I said, the best shape is a box. It'll keep it more flat. But spheres can also be cars. Capsules can be cars. All of these shapes can be cars as well. Like I said, make sure you rewatch the part where I explain all of the different settings for the car. You can have very fast cars. You can have very slow cars. You can have all sorts of different types of settings for your car. And you can even do different things for ideas. Like if you want to simulate the reversing of a real car, you could make a button press where if you press that button, it will change the way that these variables are right here for the rotating and for the speed if you're pressing forward. And you can actually make a real reversal of a car. You can do real car simulators. You can even make your car jump if you were to add forces to your car. You can add external forces to your car. So it's not just using these car controls. You can set up all sorts of different types of special car controls. You can set up drifting, where if you're holding your key for a certain amount of time, it'll start to change the steering force a little bit more. Or in this case, how fast the player is rotating. There are all sorts of different things that you can do for your car. And one more thing that you can do by going to the player, remember, you can actively change all of these settings at any time using events. So if you want to make a different texture, let's say you're riding on ice. If you're riding on ice, you could change the friction of your car or change the friction of the ground. You can change the restitution, the bounciness of your object. You can change all sorts of different types of things. You can even change the gravity scale of your car to make it heavier or lighter if you want to float. You can do all sorts of different things, and you can even create a racing game. Now, that's the end of the tutorial. I hope you all enjoyed the tutorial, and if you liked the tutorial, make sure to like, comment down below what tutorials you want next. Also, comment down below would you want a racing game tutorial, okay? It's now much easier to make racing games in GDevelop with all sorts of different features. So if you do want a racing game, make sure to comment down below what features that you'll want in a full racing game tutorial. Once again, if you liked the video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next tutorial.